Can I congratulate you? You managed to stay within the time limit, which is 15 minutes for the opening statement. So without further ado, I call upon Mr. Michael Nugent to make his opening statement, and the 15 minutes starts now, Mike.
Thank you. The word God obviously means a lot of different things to different people. So I'm just going to use the phrase David's God to describe the God that David is describing, which started off as being a being that's supremely powerful, supremely intelligent, supremely benevolent, and created the universe. And started off, the argument started off on the basis of arguing that essentially there's a cause for the universe, and that it's more plausible that a supernatural being was the cause of that. And then suddenly, as many of these arguments do when people try to mix scientific explanations with religious explanations, suddenly made a massive leap from the relatively uncontroversial claim that something may have caused the universe in which we currently live, to that Jesus Christ, a human being who lived in Palestine 2,000 years ago, is the son of that creator. And there's no link between those two claims. You've got to separate those two claims from the very beginning. You cannot argue that there is the universe had a beginning, therefore it must have had a cause, therefore you can't have gay marriage. You know, there's no link between scientific claims about the beginning of the universe and moral and ethical claims about how we should live today, or claims that whatever is the cause of the existence of the universe, whether it be natural or supernatural, even if you grant that it's supernatural, which I don't, there's no link between that and any particular version of gods, the thousands of gods that humans have invented over the millennia, most of which everyone here doesn't believe in, most of which everyone here would consider to be as implausible as I consider the Christian God to be. And I don't think that there is any argument that can be made by mixing science and religion together in that way. The most that you can argue is that an unknowable being of unknowable intelligence and benevolence may or may not have caused the universe. And the answer to that, of course, is we don't know what caused our universe. But what we do know is that there is an unbreakable pattern ever since we started discovering how the universe operates naturally. There is an unbreakable pattern from the time that we thought that the Earth was at the centre of everything and that everything revolved around the Earth, to Copernicus discovering that the Sun is what the Earth and the other planets revolve around, to Newton's discovery that that it is gravity that holds the various planets in orbit, to the discovery that the Earth isn't even the centre of the galaxy, or the Sun isn't, to the discovery that there are many galaxies, to the discovery that there are 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, each of which has 100 billion stars like our Sun. And every way along that path to discovery, it has been a constant one-way traffic of supernatural explanations being overtaken by natural explanations. And there's nothing going the other way. There are no examples of phenomena where we once believed that we had a good scientific explanation and now we realise that God did it. It's just 100% flow in one direction of natural explanations overtaking supernatural explanations. And that leads us to believe that it is reasonable to assume that when we discover, if we discover, what it was that happened before the Big Bang, that it's going to be a natural explanation rather than a supernatural explanation. In terms of the scale of the universe, when we do think about that, of the 100 billion galaxies, each of which has 100 billion stars like our Sun, the idea that whatever caused that to happen was an intelligent being who created that vast expanse for the benefit of one species on one planet, orbiting one of 100 billion stars in one of 100 billion galaxies, is, to my mind, an example of the hubris of humans and our massive overestimation of our place in the overall scheme of things in the universe. We are one species on one planet in a speck of a universe that is not only not fine-tuned for life, but the vast majority of the universe is inhospitable to life. Some parts of it, it is possible for life to first of all begin in, and secondly evolve in. But it is not the case that the universe was fine-tuned for our existence. It is that, if you want to use the phrase fine-tuned, which is misleading because it implies a fine-tuner, but it is us who have evolved to fit into the environment in which it is possible for us to live, rather than the environment being created for us to live in. I want to touch on the issue of the morality, because to me that's almost more important than the arguments about how the universe began. Because look, we're discovering more and more all the time, and religion will find a way to crowbar into its existing theories the developments that science provides us with as to knowing how the universe operates naturally. But the most significant harm that religion causes is the hijacking of the idea of morality, and the claim that morality is not only given to us by this supernatural being who we don't even know exists, but that it's a particular version, depending what religion you are in, that tells you what you should and shouldn't do. Now, if we just hypothetically imagine that there is no God, for those of you who are religious, just imagine for a moment that there's no God, and imagine, I'm assuming that for most of you, if you did discover that there wasn't a God, that you wouldn't immediately set out raping and pillaging the following morning, and that you would still have some sense of what is right and wrong based on empathy and reciprocity and cooperation and fairness, and that you would recognise intuitively that morality is related to how we deal with other sentient, conscious beings. Do we help to minimise unnecessary suffering among other conscious sentient beings, or do we try to maximise the well-being of other sentient, conscious beings? And if you think about it, in the absence of conscience and in the absence of sentient beings, there is no morality. There's no morality in an inanimate planet. Morality only makes any sense if you're talking about how you affect the suffering or well-being of other conscious beings. And however you work out the nuances of that, and it's not easy because there's so many interdependent possible outcomes of anything that you do. It's a tricky thing to work out. You don't know what the right thing to do is. You can just make your best guess based on your empathy and your compassion and your reciprocity and your sense of fairness and cooperation. But what religion does is it adds into that already complicated mix a corrupting factor of saying that there are certain instances where even if something seems to be the compassionate and ethical thing to do, you shouldn't do it because somebody wrote down in a book 2,000 years ago that the creator of the universe had told them that you have to stone a woman to death for adultery, which still happens in Islamic countries. That you have to stone a man to death for gathering sticks on the Sabbath, which the Christians have generally found ways to rationalise as secularism and secular morality takes over, and most civilised religions start to ditch those elements and say, yeah, okay, and then they may try to justify them by saying, well, that was for a certain time, that was God telling people in a certain place, you have to say it in a certain way. But the very fact that you notice that distinction, that there are elements of your sacred book that you can immediately just say, yeah, that's morally right. Love your neighbour as yourself. The story of the Good Samaritan. You can immediately see those and say, yeah, they're good moral ideas. And then in the same book, you're exhorted to stone a man to death for gathering sticks on the Sabbath. And you just know that there's something about that. Now, however you justify it, the fact that you notice that distinction between something you can automatically accept and something that you have to justify in some way shows that you are applying your own natural morality to that book. You're not getting your morality from the book, you're applying your own morality to the book. And I'll finish this session by touching on the issue of Jesus, who again, like all characters in most sacred books, has kind of dual personalities, and at times seems to be a very nice character, and then at other times says that he will kill the children of Jezebel for the sins of their mother. Doesn't seem to me to be a particularly morally good message, yet there it is in the same book as he is telling people to do good things. And I suspect, if you look at it from the perspective of not believing that you're reading a book that's written or authored or dictated by the creator of the universe or inspired by the creator of the universe, but if you look at it as books written by humans, and you look at it as a chronological sequence of books, and if you take the whole stories of Jesus in terms of the New Testament, not in the sequence in which they're written in the Bible, or in which they appear in the Bible, but the chronological sequence in which they were written, you will see the evolution over decades of what begins as a human, Jewish, apocalyptic preacher in the letters of Paul and in the early parts of the book of Apocalypse and in the Gospel of Mark, which is the first of the chronological Gospels to be written. You'll find that Jesus, whose message was that the kingdom of God was coming to earth during the lifetime of those who were listening to him. And therefore, don't worry about the morrow, don't worry about property, etc., etc. And then when that didn't happen, and when, certainly after the fall of the temple, when the Jews were trying to regroup, both politically and religiously, and it became clear that that generation was dying out, the message becomes more and more metaphorical and long-term. And the relationship of this human Jewish preacher to the creator of the universe shifts from being with Paul, from coming from his resurrection, to Mark, where it's shifted back to his baptism by John the Baptist, to Matthew and Luke, where it's shifted back to his conception, to John, where he was there from the beginning. And so you can see all of these patterns. You can see all of these patterns if you are looking at it objectively, if you're looking at it free from the belief that it is some special type of book that is dictated by the creator of the universe, and if you see it as just an ordinary book written by humans. And if you notice the same objectivity that you bring to reading, if you do read the sacred texts of other religions, where if you read the Quran and you read about Muhammad flying on a winged horse, you'll bring a level of skepticism to that you should equally bring to some of the more implausible claims in the New and certainly the Old Testament. And finally, in terms of the resurrection of Jesus showing anything, really, there's any number of people resurrected in the Christian Bible, from Lazarus to half a dozen people from the Old Testament through to the New Testament. When Jesus died, apparently, a whole load of people arose from their graves and wandered around greeting people. The idea that Jesus' resurrection in the Christian Bible is something unique, even within that book, never mind within the history of various mythologies, is just simply incorrect. So I'll leave it at that for the time being. There's some other points that you made, David, that I'll address later on in terms of the fine-tuning. But I think I've answered most of the points you've raised there. Thank you.